The Bucs find a way to lose again, falling to the Panthers 23-20 and all but sealing their fate for the 2025 season. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, the Buccaneers do what the Buccaneers have done. They found yet another way to lose a football game. And look, I said it to the insiders during the game. We all know what's going to happen, right? After Carolina got into field goal range, kicked the field goal, I said, we all know what's about to happen, right? And when you look at the box score, and this is why box score, scouting can be so dangerous. Baker, not a terrible game, not a great game, but not terrible. 18 for 26, 145 and a touchdown. Had that interception that we'll get to in just a moment. Bryce Young, 21 for 32 for 191 and 2. You take a look at what the Bucs did against the Carolina running backs. None of their running backs had more than 30 rushing yards in this game. Dowdle, 29, Chuba, 27. You're like, okay, the Bucs defense controlled the running game, made the Panthers one-dimensional. And the Bucs, on the flip side, 33 rushes for 169 yards. Bucky had 71. Baker with almost 50. Rashad with 45. But then you take a look at the receivers. Ibuka led the team in receiving yards with 40 yards on one catch. He had 2 targets all game long. Evans, 5 for 31. Godwin, 5 for 30. J-Mac, 2 for 15. Ted McMillan alone for Carolina had 6 for 73 and a touchdown. It all came down to the ball being in the offense's hands. And I think after Thursday night, that's the way that the offense wanted it. You saw Mike Evans walking off the field after the loss to Carolina, screaming 3rd and 28 over and over and over. And they had a chance to go out there and at the very least tie this game, maybe even win it. The offense now had the opportunity to help this football team get a win. And what happened? Baker Mayfield throws an interception. And I've seen a lot of people getting mad at Baker Mayfield for the throw. I was talking to, a longtime everydayer of this show, my buddy Matt. He was beside himself talking about Baker Mayfield, saying Baker can go with Todd Bowles. I don't agree with that. When you go back and you watch the play, that interception was on Mike Evans. And, Mike's going to get a gold jacket. He's arguably the greatest Buccaneer in team history. But you watch that play, that interception is because of Mike Evans. And I understand that they were in a scramble drill, or Mike thought they were in a scramble drill. And right as Baker releases that ball was when Evans cuts off the route, turns, and tries to go the other way. All he had to do was keep going where he was going. But at the very least, and Mike should know better, when he cut off the route to go the other direction, he took his eyes off of Baker. That was the difference. That was what lost this game. When you're going into a scramble drill, because Baker, we've seen it. We saw it earlier in that drive when he takes off and runs out past the 40-yard line on 3rd down to keep the drive alive and try to will this team to a tie or a win. You cannot take your eyes off of a quarterback that will take off and move. When you're going into a scramble drill, you have to see what the quarterback is doing. And because he took his eyes off and turned his back to Baker to turn around and try to get open, the defensive back, he was watching Baker the entire time. Easiest interception of his life because it went directly to him, which is where Mike Evans was supposed to be in the eyes of Baker Mayfield. So that interception's not on Baker. I'm not going to sit here and blame him for this. I'm not going to blame Baker for this loss at all because it's not on him. It's not even solely on Mike Evans. I'm going to get into the fact that this loss was, is, and will always be on the hands of the coaches. You have fundamental failures from the top to the bottom of this coaching staff. Shockingly, the only coach that seemed to have a good day was McGahee, the special teams coordinator, because the Bucs opted to give up 35 yards on every Carolina possession by just kicking it for a touchback because they don't trust their coverage team. And then on the flip side, Cam Johnson with two of the most electric kick returns we've seen from him all season. But to be in that situation where you're already in Chase McLaughlin's field goal range, but you're going for the win. You need the win. To have it end like that is the perfect summary of what this Buccaneers team has been for the last 2 months. I mean, that was it. If you wanted to sum up the Bucs season in one play, it was that one. Because everything that could go wrong on that play did. That is a play that we have seen Baker and Mike Evans make 100 times. But the way this season has gone, with the injuries, with the failures, with the mistakes, it was all summed up right there. Baker bought some time. Mike made a mistake. The game ended. And I know a lot of Bucs fans are fuming. A lot of Bucs fans are just disappointed. A lot of Bucs fans are sick. I mean, that's the best way to put it. They're sick. I had a couple of insiders say, I don't know if I can watch the next 2 weeks because I'm so tired of getting my hopes up just to be let down like this week in and week out. And what you are witnessing is a tale of two halves. The first 8 weeks of this season, the Bucs find a way to win that game. They did it over and over. And when you needed Baker to make a play, he made a play and won you the game. Now, nobody's making plays. Nobody is stepping up when it's needed the most. And when you had a defense that by and large played way better than they did the week before, but made a couple of mistakes. You had a mistake by Jamel Dean on the Teteroa McMillan touchdown at the end of the half. Gave the Panthers a 3-point lead. You had a mistake by Benjamin Morrison on a play to Coker that put them in field goal range. It's those one or two plays that have proven to be the difference. And in the first 8 weeks, those plays went the Bucs' way. Now, nothing is going the Bucs' way. They are not getting the bounces. They are not getting the calls. Everything that can go wrong is going wrong for this organization. And it is beyond execution. It is beyond talent. It is 100% mental. I said it 2 weeks ago that this team looks like one that has lost all confidence in themselves, and they're all just waiting for that one thing to go wrong and all the dominoes fall. And that's what happened in this game. A game that could have given you a 96% chance to make the playoffs, and you lose it in that fashion. That's the way this season has gone. And it's a gut punch to the crew. It's a gut punch to the people that sit down and watch these games every single week. And look, while I've given Josh Grizzard the benefit of the doubt for most of the season, this game might be the worst play calling we have seen all year long, and there's absolutely no excuse for it. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. And with CarGurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on cars that you want. Because when it comes to a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. CarGurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else, so you can shop the way that you want. You'll love being able to filter by everything, mileage, trim, features, so you're only seeing cars that actually fit what you need. Their price drop alerts are a lifesaver. You get notified the second a car that you're watching becomes a better deal. That's how I got my car last year. I set the mileage, I set exactly what features I wanted, and I set my price limit. And all of a sudden, I started getting notified, and boom, my dream car fell right into my lap. CarGurus connects you with trusted dealerships for transparent and hassle-free buying processes. With over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace, you'll always find the best deals. So shop the way that you want with the tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it all easy. Buy or sell your car today at CarGurus.com. That's CarGurus.com. CarGurus.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Buccaneers fan, the Everyday or All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedonbucs.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You'll also find the link in the show notes. I have given Josh Grizzard a very, very long leash this year. You have had a shuffled offensive line all year. Then you lose one of your starting guards. You lose another one. You get him back. You lose him for the rest of the season. You had Emeka Egbuka as your #1 receiver for most of the year because Mike was there, then he was gone, then he was back, then he was gone again. Chris was gone, then he was back, then gone, then back. Jalen McMillan just comes back. Bucky was out for 2 months. And I said, you know what? We have not seen what this offense is truly capable of because they haven't had the pieces that they were supposed to have heading into the season. On Friday's live show, I said if there was ever a time for Grizz to pull out his bag of tricks and go all out and really just let it loose, it was this game. It was a game against a defense that couldn't rush the passer, that could not match up with all 4 of your receivers. And instead, they ran the ball non-stop. The offensive line couldn't protect the Panthers' pass rush. Baker was getting pressured. You had an opportunity early in this game, 1st and goal, after taking a field goal off the scoreboard because of a roughing the center penalty. You get a new set of downs. You get inside the 5-yard line and you run it 3 straight times and just settle for a shorter field goal. You had one pass that was more than 10 yards down the field in the first 3 quarters of this game. You had the single most abysmal 2-minute drill I have ever seen. You have an opportunity to put the Panthers away. You could have put them away. You are up 10-6 with the ball with 2 minutes to go, with your offense on the field and receiving the second half kickoff. And what do? You run the ball and then let the time run all the way down. Then you have a bad pass on Egbuka's first target where the ball went directly into the ground. You get a penalty, then you throw an incomplete pass. That directly leads to Bryce Young getting back on the field and finding Teteroa McMillan for a touchdown right before half. So instead of you having at least a 13-6 lead, you are trailing 13-10. What was the difference in this game? What was the score differential in this game? It was 3 points. That touchdown directly led to you losing this game. You have all these receivers back, and you run the ball 30 times in the first 3 quarters. Now, I know Carolina's secondary is solid. I said it all week long. They're very opportunistic. But there is no way you can convince me that those guys weren't getting open down the field. I said it to the insiders. I said it to the All Access members. I needed to see the all 22 angle when it comes out of a play. I can't remember. I believe it was in the second quarter, but it was a dump off to Rashad. Emeka Egbuka had a free release at the line of scrimmage, and neither one of the corners went with him. I need to see what the safety was doing, because if Baker makes that throw, we're probably talking about an Emeka Egbuka touchdown on that play. But the TV broadcast did not show what the safeties were doing. So maybe I'm wrong in that. But that was an opportunity to take a shot down the field and put up some points. But this game plan, it had to be either because you wanted to dominate time of possession to protect your defense that has been giving up nearly 30 points a game heading into this week since the bye week, or you didn't trust the protection of your offensive line, or it could be a combination of the two. This was as clear evidence as you need to show that this coaching staff cannot get the job done. All game long, mental mistakes, terrible, absolutely terrible situational play calling, poor preparation. This game is on the coaches. And it wasn't just Grizz that was making bad situational play calls. Again, go back to the Tet McMillan touchdown. Bowles sends an all-out blitz, and Jamel Dean loses track of the ball. Teteroa McMillan's wide open in the end zone, and the Panthers take a lead. In a first half where the Bucs dominated. They truly did. They dominated on both sides of the ball that first half. That game, if we had talked about that play, if we had talked about the biggest moment in the game, it was that one, because that game turned on a dime after that touchdown. That was the difference. Another example of not putting your players in the best situation that they need in order to succeed. You had great coverage for most of that game by Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison, especially when they were lined up on Tet McMillan. There was one play where Morrison had incredible coverage on McMillan, and he made an even better catch. I said it to the insiders, to the All Access guys, sometimes you got to tip your cap. And on that particular play, you got to tip it to McMillan, because that was an incredible play by him. But then it was the little things. It was the little things the rest of the way that really started to add up. And it was, oh no, here we go again. And the players started falling apart. Luke Gedeke with probably his worst game as an NFL player. That dude, he wasn't in it mentally at all. Penalty after penalty after mental mistake after mental mistake after penalty. It was nonstop with 67 today. Inexcusable. And this is why I have been talking for the last 3 weeks that I can't defend these guys anymore. 3 weeks ago, it started with Todd. The last 2 games, it's been Grizz. You finally got all your guys, and you can't call a competent game. The coaching staff has to go. They absolutely have to go. And I see a lot of you guys in the chat, and I'd like to get to a lot of these. We will coming up. But, we need to talk about how this season has shifted, how it's gone down in flames, and what's next for this organization. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different, like that Tetero McMillan touchdown at the end of the first half. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, and momentum flips after a turnover. There's live spreads and money lines adjusted instantly and player props as guys begin to heat up or cool off. The Buccaneers are somehow still the favorites to win the NFC South at minus 175, while the Panthers, who have a one-game lead, are now at plus 140. The Bucs are also minus 174 to make the playoffs, plus 146 to miss the playoffs, needing to win their last two games. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Wrapping things up here on a post-game live reaction episode, and I promise I'm going to get to as many of these comments as I possibly can. The Bucs have lost 3 in a row for the second time since the bye week. 1 win in the last 7 weeks. There's no coming back from that. I don't care that they can still make the playoffs. They don't deserve to be there. They don't deserve to have that accolade next to their names this season. It has been an absolute dumpster fire since that bye. And now you go off to Miami and face Quinn Ewers and a Dolphins team that lost at home by 24 points to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I cannot find one reason to believe that the Bucs can win there. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, that we have seen the last 2 months that makes me think that this team can go on the road and win a must-win game, even being as healthy as they are right now, which is the healthiest they've been all season, because they have shown time and time again that they can't do it. You can blame coaching, you can blame execution, you can blame mental mistakes, you can blame penalties, you can blame preparation, you can blame specific players, because it doesn't matter anymore. None of that matters, because when you add all of it up, the Buccaneers team that we have seen since November 9th, when they lost 28-23 to the Patriots, that encapsulates all of those things together. They lost that game to New England. They lost a close game the following week to Buffalo, and they have never recovered. This is why Todd Bowles is getting fired. There's no way that you can justify any of this, even with all of the injuries. This was a team that was not coached well all season long. Their offense is nowhere close to where it needs to be or where it should be, considering all the talent that they have. They're a joke. This team is a sad, pathetic joke. Jason Light is going to have his work cut out for him this offseason. There's a lot of players that are needed on the defensive side, but it all starts with coaching. It starts with that coaching search and finding the right man to lead this team. And the right man that's going to bring in dedicated coordinators to run the offense, the defense, and the special teams to maximize the talent on this roster. And I'm going to do a deep dive into candidates and some of these players as far as who can stay and who should be shown the door. But for now, we all have to get through the next 2 weeks together, knowing what an inexcusable disappointment and slap in the face the 2025 Buccaneers are. And I've seen people say that this was the most disappointing team or the most disappointing season or the most heartbreaking season of any they can remember. I still go back to 2008. I still think that this team and the 2008 team are walking hand in hand as two of the biggest disappointments in franchise history. This season in 2008, those are bigger disappointments than 1976 going 0-14. It's more disappointing than these 80s teams that were winning 3, 4, or 5 games a year. Because that team in 08 and this team in 2025 had the talent to make a run to the Super Bowl. They didn't have the coaching. They didn't have the preparation. They didn't have the guts. And it's all of you guys that are suffering for it. All of you guys that are season ticket holders, that bought Sunday ticket, that dedicate your Sundays to watching this team that we talked about, not just us. I'm using the royal we, NFL Network, NFL Sirius Radio, ESPN. They were all talking about this being a Super Bowl contending team. They're not even going to get to 9 wins. They should have been 13-4. They'll be lucky to finish 8-9. Going to jump into the chat real quick because you guys have been sticking it out with me and really, I know you guys are struggling. Let's see. We got Blue Boater says there's a bunch of offensive options for head coach. And then we got a couple of people in the chat talking about Joe Brady. Joe Brady's a guy that I will talk about, the offensive coordinator for the Bills. He is going to be an option. Clint Kubiak, of course, is going to be a guy that we talk about. It may be better to go defensive minded. I know that a lot of Bucs fans want to go offensive minded. That's how this typically works, that when you have a defensive minded head coach and you fire him, you switch to offensive and vice versa. The defense is the one that needs more help. And I actually would be a little probably more confident if you hire a defensive minded head coach who brings in an offensive coordinator that can utilize all this talent. Instead of having another head coach that plays double duty, I would rather have somebody come in that will have a dedicated offensive coordinator and a dedicated defensive coordinator, and those guys do their jobs and call plays. I think that's the direction this team needs to go in. Gary in the chat says, we wanted a running game, but we didn't want to lose our air dominance. 100%. And again, you wonder, was that the game plan because you were trying to keep the Panthers offense on the sideline to protect your defense? Was that the game plan because you didn't trust the guys up front to protect Baker for him to be able to air it out? What was the reason that you were, dare I say, Dave Canales-like in your stubbornness to be able to go out there and run the ball as much as you did? And a lot of times it was working. But I go back to that 1st and goal when you ran it 3 straight times. They knew you were going to run it. You had already scored a touchdown on a back shoulder fade to Mike Evans. Why are you not sending triple receivers out there to spread out that defense and hit Godwin on a slant, hit Ibuka on a slant, hit Otten on a quick out? The play calling was terrible. Not knowing the situation is what is dooming this team. Let's see. We have Flesh Thrower. Rarely saw such a dead crew. Hurts to say and acknowledge it, except maybe for Bucky the Buccaneer. I do not see any fire anymore. This is, and I know they're getting ready to face a Dolphins team that reportedly Mike McDaniel is safe. Tua is not. Mike McDaniel is reportedly safe for next year as head coach. That is the perfect example of a team that did not give up on their head coach when things were going poorly. That was a team with their backs against the wall, and they were struggling week in and week out, and they never, ever quit on their head coach. I don't know if I can say the same about this Buccaneers team. I don't know if I can sit here and say that this team is still fighting tooth and nail for their head coach and trying to reach the level that they're capable of. Because I don't believe that they are. I don't believe that that's where this team's mindset is right now. We got Lay to Wood 6. We massively underachieved this season. Absolutely. We got Corey. Todd looked like he knew it was over in the post-game presser despite his answers. I think he looked like a guy that knew it last week when they lost to the Falcons, and that's why you saw the outburst that he had, is because he knew that that game was for his job. And if they lost that game, they were not going to bounce back. They were not going to make the playoffs, and he was going to be shown the door. We also got Corey in the chat saying Light has drafted well. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And a lot of you in the chat are saying the same thing. Light does not deserve to be fired over all of this. Yes, he has made some mistakes. He does deserve some of the blame. Joshua, I see you in the chat saying that. He does deserve some of the blame. But these are players that he and Todd picked on the defensive side of the ball to allow Todd to run his defense the way that it's supposed to be run, not the way he was forced to run it in 2024. And you see how that's working out. It's blown up in their face. So yes, while Light does deserve some blame, he does not deserve enough of it to lose his job when he's been one of the best general managers in the NFL for the better part of the last decade. That is going to do it for this episode. I will have plenty more reaction to this game coming up on tomorrow's show. More dive into the mistakes that were made, and maybe we're going to start this head coaching search and candidate dive a little early. But I want to thank you for tuning into today's Locked On Bucs. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Become a Locked On Bucs every dayer club, all access member. Go to lockedonbucs.supercast.com to check out the options there. You could be an insider. Join subtext.com/LockedOnBucs. The link for both of those is in the show notes. You want to support the show, but you don't want to be an everydayer club member or an insider. It's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.